Meanwhile, the Trump administration is filing an appeal after a federal court rules most of the president's reciprocal tariffs are illegal, accusing the commander-in-chief of exceeding his authority.
Trump taking to Truth Social to react. He says in this quote, he says, all tariffs are still in effect, but warning if these tariffs ever went away, it would be a total disaster for the country. It would make us financially weak, and we have to be strong.
Fox News contributor Saul Weisenberg joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, first of all, can you explain this ruling to us?
I'll do my best. These cover the Liberation Day tariffs. And what the court ruled, this was a statutory interpretation, not a constitutional interpretation by the Federal Circuit. And what they said was, you were not, to President Trump, you were not given the power under this particular act. The act is called the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, or Emergency Economic Powers Act. And what the court said was, what the court reminded the president was that all constitutional power to enact tariffs resides in Congress. What's happened is Congress has delegated an enormous amount of that authority to the president in various statutes. But the court said they didn't do it here. If Congress is going to give the president the power under this particular act to impose tariffs, they've got to say so unambiguously. And it was a 7-4 decision, very strong decision. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Supreme Court does here. It's not necessarily something that's going to be a win for the president.
What do you think about, does this undermine, because we were talking earlier on the couch about how President Trump has used this not just economically, he's used this to actually get foreign countries to do things we want them to do, not just in terms of economics, but other things like, cooperate with us on national security, maybe wind down wars. So how does this undermine just the country? Forget about just the president, the country on the world stage.
Well, the ruling unquestionably undermines what the president has been doing with these Liberation Day tariffs. Again, the question is, just because it's good as a matter of policy, if you think that it is, the president still has to have the authority to do it. He can't just do it because he's the president. And that's really the key here. And so the court just said, look, we'd like to be able to do it, but we can't.
So what is the difference? Explain the difference between the tariffs that are enacted under the emergency economic powers versus tariffs that are enacted for, like, steel tariffs that are part of national security.
Well, this particular act doesn't even, in answer to your question, doesn't even ever use the word tariff. It uses the word regulate. Congress gives the president power to completely prohibit certain things. But the court said, look, they don't, not only does Congress not even use the word tariff, they don't use any of the synonyms for tariff. This is something called the major questions doctrine. And if you're going to come in and give the president the authority to set tariffs, you've got to do it clearly and unambiguously. That's the major questions doctrine. And that's really the issue. But there's no question there are other statutes that the president has imposed tariffs on, through, not as sweeping, and that's not affected at all. These are 5 particular tariffs that the president imposed. But as you indicated, these are the Liberation Day tariffs, and they're quite broad and sweeping.
Who filed this, by the way?
Well, 5 small businesses, and then they were joined by 12 states. That's who did it.
And one of the problems is if it went to the Supreme Court and this sticks, would the government have to pay these businesses back their tariffs? And so it is something that we got to keep an eye on. 4 of the judges that ruled in dissent are Obama and Bush appointees, so it's not necessarily partisan. I think it really is on the matter of principle and how it's interpreted. Saul Weisenberg, thanks for joining us.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Indeed.
The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court Wednesday to quickly make a decision on whether President Donald Trump has the authority to impose his sweeping tariffs under federal emergency law. This appeal is a result of a federal appeals court ruling 7-4 that a vast majority of Trump's tariffs were illegal, according to the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, even though it allowed the duties to remain until the case was resolved. Many states and small businesses challenged Trump's tariffs in a lawsuit saying they were causing serious economic harm. These unlawful tariffs are inflicting serious harm on small businesses and jeopardizing their survival, said Jeffrey Schwab, an attorney with the Liberty Justice Center. The Trump administration, however, countered the appeal, arguing that striking down the tariffs could cause serious economic harm. That decision casts a pall of uncertainty upon ongoing foreign negotiations that the president has been pursuing through tariffs over the past 5 months. Jeopardizing both already negotiated framework deals and ongoing negotiations, the Trump administration argued in its appeal. The stakes in this case could not be higher. Officials also pointed out that the levies have raised $159 billion since late August, a figure that has more than doubled from the previous year. Although the Constitution does give Congress the power to set tariffs throughout the years, many lawmakers have delegated those authorities to the White House. Although Trump has been seen to use this to his advantage, some of his duties on steel, aluminum, autos, and earlier tariffs on China were left in place by former President Joe Biden and are not part of this case. Legal experts have noted that the government has also warned that if the courts strike down these tariffs, the U.S. Treasury could be forced to refund billions that have already been collected. The Supreme Court is expected to decide soon on whether they will take up the case directly, which will potentially set up a major ruling on the limits of presidential power over trade.